Stormborn by Black K Cat. Chapter 2 Finale. Sonata for a Moment's Solace. Sonata. Music of a particular form consisting of 4 movements. Each of the movements differ in tempo, rhythm, and melody, but are held together by subject and style. Usually the first movement of the piece serves as the exposition, a development, or a recapitulation. The fighting tapers off almost completely by early afternoon. Sakura finishes repairing Akiri Nin's crushed ankle and looks up for her next patient only to realize that she hasn't heard any new cries for medics in a while. Across the prone body, her partner, who's been assisting her for several hours now, looks back, and Sakura is struck speechless at the sight of who it is. Looking equally startled, Kabuto just blinks back. It's sheer instinct that has Sakura on her feet, reaching for her glove, but before she can, Kabuto casts her a droll look, huffs, and points to a setayate which bears a tight spiral within a circle. Sakura deflates with a sigh, shaking her head. Naruto. Of course it was Naruto! It helps nothing at all that Kabuto gives her an entirely too commiserating smile in return. Now that she's not moving, not rushing on to the next casualty as far as humanly possible, the wear is catching up to her. Feeling drawn and drained, she glances around the medical tent, taking in the neat rows of beds lined up with military precision, the faintly soothing sense of medical chakra hanging in the air. There are still a few stretchers being carried in, but fresher medics are waiting, and Sakura doesn't have to feel guilty about taking a breather. She assesses the number of medics she can see, and is relieved to find that there are only a few missing. Several of them are probably in beds themselves, from chakra exhaustion or catching an enemy attack, and the Chunin teams she sent out with them appear mostly unharmed. Yakushi-san! A child's voice called, and Kabuto falters slightly, almost falling. Sakura doesn't hesitate, but reaches out to grab his elbow and help haul him the rest of the way to his feet. He doesn't thank her for it, doesn't tear his eyes away from the trio of Genin bounding towards him. Natsu, Aki, Makoto, he answers, fingers already flickering green as he takes a step toward the children. Are you hurt? They're fine. Another unfamiliar voice answers, calm and perfectly even. A tall man steps into the tent behind the team, dark-haired and lightly tanned with golden eyes, a young woman with long blonde hair on his heels. All the Genin are perfectly well, if tired. Stop fretting. Kabuto rubs and crosses his arms over his chest. I'm hardly fretting, Utakata, he answers tartly. Just interested. Where is our illustrious leader? The man, who's wearing a hitayate with a spiral that has 6 smaller curling lines, somewhere between bubbles and tentacles surrounding it, looks politely disbelieving, but answers nevertheless. Naruto-sama took Gaara Haku and his new bow to go deal with Nagato. I believe we should brace ourselves for a new addition to our ranks soon enough. Or several. Gaara-sensei said we should see if you needed help, the red-headed Kunoichi Genin says, pulling her twin and her other teammate forward. They look both well accustomed to this and immediately resign, and Sakura feels a bit of a pang once again over what her own Genin team could have been if they'd been able to look past themselves. I can take them with me to find some food if you need a bit of rest, Kabuto-san, the blonde woman offers with a bright smile, and we can bring back some if you're hungry. Thank you, Hotaru, Kabuto answers, rubbing a hand over his face and nearly knocking his glasses askew. He glances over at Sakura, dark eyes warily assessing, and then adds, for Haruno-san as well, if you would. And make sure the other teams eat, too. I don't want any of you dropping from exhaustion and cluttering up my hospital. And find that stupid aunt of mine while you're at it. She always manages to overdo things. Utakata snorts softly. Koto will eat you alive if she hears you talking about her like that, he warned, as the young woman herds the Genin back out into the lightning rain. Kabuto's face does a weird twitching thing, almost like a spasm. You're on a first-name basis now? He asks, sounding almost pained. That gets him another perfectly polite smile, as mild as milk and as untrustworthy as the hush before a wild storm. She insisted, apparently saving her life merits near adoption into the Ookami clan, which I'm absolutely certain you never told me, Kabuto, in case you've forgotten the time in Iwa. Haruno, this is Utakata Jinchuriki of the Rokubi. Kabuto interrupts with a dark look, crossing his arms over his chest and glaring at the other Uzushio nin. Utakata meets Haruno, Sakura, apprentice to Tsunade of the Sonin. Utakata arches one brow, giving the gray-haired man an eloquent look, but doesn't press. He shifts his gaze to Sakura and inclines his head politely. Naruto-san, thank you for all of your effort. You have healed several of my fellow Uzushio shinobi, and we are truly very grateful. A little soul-conscious, Sakura smooths down her skirt and offers the Jinchuriki smile. Of course, she answers. You're Naruto's people. The man smiles at her brighter this time, like that's the best answer she could have possibly given. Why bother being a shinobi when it's absolutely clear you're better suited as a diplomat? Kabuto muttered, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. Utakata's chakra flickers and flares in agitation, entirely at odds with his calm expression. And it takes Sakura a moment to realize that it's his Bijuu's power rather than his, and the Bijuu's annoyance. She was still not entirely certain whether to tense and go for a weapon or ride it out and trust the Jinchuriki. But all Utakata does is lay a hand over his chest and take a slow, deep breath as his eyes go distant, like he's looking at something the rest of them can't see. The angry chakra settles and he blinks, eyes refocusing, and frowns faintly at Kabuto. You know Saiki doesn't appreciate people saying such things. He chides. And besides, you've met Gaara and Karin, haven't you? If I wasn't at least a little skilled at diplomacy, we'd eat nothing but fish. Ever. The farmers and merchants would have slammed their doors in our faces years ago. Kabuto rolls his eyes just a little, but doesn't argue. Instead, he looks away, out at the muddy battlefield stretching away into the dim gray-green gloom. Nagato, he asks absently, adjusting his glasses again. Utakata nods in confirmation. And where Nagato goes, I have little doubt Konan will follow. Kabuto's expression turns wickedly amused. 5 Jinchuriki, the Storm God, several hundred Uzumaki, a handful of shinobi clans with abilities thought lost in the city's fall, the last of the Yuki clan, and a dozen additional overpowered shinobi, including a Rinnegan user. I wonder just how many of the daimyos and village leaders are going to faint when they hear about this. Put like that, Sakura takes a careful breath and checks to make sure her hands aren't shaking. That sounds dangerous. Not so much for the other countries, because she knows Naruto knows just how fiercely he'll try to keep the peace, but for Uzushio. It's because they were destroyed once already for being too powerful, and now they're even more so. Will you be okay? She ventures, drawing both men's eyes to her and making their expressions darken faintly. Against the rest of the countries, I mean, last time, Uzushio didn't have 4 Jinchuriki who were utterly loyal to the Rizukage, and another 2 who'd support them in a pinch. A woman puts in, dryly amused, and Sakura turns to see the Mizukage approaching, one arm cradled against her chest, with her 2 slightly battered bodyguards hovering nervously behind her. Sakura moves forward, chakra already gathering, as she checks Mei's face to make sure her attention is welcome. Mei just offers her broken arm almost absently and keeps her attention on the Uzushio nin. And the world is in a different way than it used to be. I'm not making any promises before I can sit down and hash this all out with your Kage, but if Uzushio is looking for alliances, Kiri is close enough that it doesn't make any sort of tactical sense for us to be at odds. Especially given the fact that Kiri is entirely surrounded by water, and our Storm God has more than earned his name. Kabuto sounds bitingly amused, and Sakura is beginning to see why Utakata is the diplomatic one here. The Jinchuriki growls, stepping forward to slap a hand over his friend's mouth, and bows politely to the Mizukage, ignoring Kabuto's sudden thrashing attempts to get him off. Thank you, Mizukage, he offers, and Sakura is at the perfect angle to see the sharp pinch he delivers to Kabuto's side. If that's the case, I look forward to the negotiations. If you'll excuse me, I believe my companion has overexerted himself and is in need of rest. Mei chuckles, waving him off as Sakura releases her arm. You may look like your father, but you've got your mother's silver tongue, she says, amused. Next time I send a messenger, try to see that your shinobi don't eat them. These 2 are still twitchy from it. The guard with the eye patch splutters with greatly offended dignity, but the one with glasses goes crimson and drops his gaze to the ground, looking sheepish. Kabuto looks smug, what Sakura can see of his face around Utakata's muffling hand as he's dragged away. Honestly, she doesn't blame him. Having a traditional enemy advocating for and all but promising peace is worth at least a little smugness. Jiraiya hears the voices well before he sees those responsible. And not going to have Fugaku's son doing that with my little boy! He's told that Naruto is too young. They're more than 60 days heart! That's to make a gap, right, Sarutobi-sama? It is! The sign that earns is very, very long suffering, but beyond that, there's no answer. Well, I don't know about you, one of the voice puts in, vastly amused and a little conflicted, but I'm surprised that it even happened in the first place. I always kind of thought Arashi was more or less asexual. I mean, he had crushes back when we were brats, but the extent of his desire was wanting to hold hands. And he always brushed the rest of us off when we'd go out to pick up girls. Brushed us off for training! What else was I supposed to think? There's a faint snort. Given how he managed to surround himself with some of the most beautiful, dangerous women in Uzushio in both lifetimes, and is still mercifully intact, that's probably in his favor. Shunka and Yui would have gutted him with a smile if he ever so much as looked at them inappropriately. They certainly did as much to Danzo the first time he met them. Sarutobi pauses thoughtfully, then hums. Now that I think of it, perhaps that would be the best way to deal with him. I'll have to ask Orochimaru if summoning them back is possible. The vaguely familiar voice laughs. I'd forgotten about your ruthless streak, old man. Though after everything, Fishcake-sama might actually go along with it. Kagami. Sarutobi sounds weary. His name isn't Fishcake! Minato protests vehemently as the three resurrected shinobi round the corner of the hospital hallway. He's named after the hero of a very important book! He shifts his hold on the bony form of Kage and Kakashi, who slung limply over his shoulder, so as to better wave his arms at the dark-haired man walking on his left. The savior of the world! Naruto! It means Maelstrom! Uchiha Kagami gives him a flat look over the head of the man he and Sarutobi are carrying between them, and Jiraiya recognizes those clothes, but can't quite bring himself to wonder what the leader of the Akatsuki is doing not clapped in irons. Or dead. Naruto is likely involved, and that's explanation enough. It also means fish cake, Kagami retorts. And if you married an Uzumaki, you knew exactly when you were doing naming him after a topic of their genetically predestined favorite food. Did you know that Uzushio had more ramen stalls than they did any other type of food stand? Did you know that an Uzumaki can eat roughly twice their weight in ramen in a single sitting? Because I lived there for years and I saw it with my own eyes and they infected me. I hated ramen before my family moved there and now I crave it. Before Jiraiya can catch Minato's response, sure to be amusing because he's usually able to hide his latent ditz qualities, but they always manage to slip out when he's smiling. The very pointy heel of Tsunade's sandal snaps into his instep and he straightens up with a yelp, saving the basin of water he's holding from spilling at the very last moment. Pay attention! She growls at him, and Jiraiya winces, but it's too late. The three sets of footsteps have come to a complete halt a few yards away, and he can feel them staring with as much dignity as he has left. Not much at this point. He reaches up and adjusts the cute little hat Tsunade had gleefully slapped onto his head as she claimed her winnings. And now that he thinks of it, he's going to have words with her about what she gets up to in private if she's got one of these things lying around in his size. Minato makes a horrified choking noise and then garbles, I think I need to sit down. Oh, my head. From the other side of the patient's bed, Orochimaru looks up, arching a coolly derisive brow before he returns to wrapping a few shallower cuts. His hair is up in a high tail, turning his face into something almost eerily androgynous, and the little white nurse's cap really doesn't help. He looks enviably unruffled in the face of entirely those short dresses and too much pink, but then again, he has never particularly cared about playing a kunoichi when the mission requires it. And in this case, Tsunade insisted. Jiraiya just knows this had to be payback for when he got her and Orochimaru into maid costumes that one glorious time he won their bet. Your head, my eyes! Kagami disagrees, choked and wounded, his voice full of mental agony. Oh, my eyes! I've got the Sharingan, you twisted, perverted excuse for a man. I'm never going to be able to unsee this! Maybe it's petty, but Jiraiya is more than content with the idea of someone else sharing his pain. Tsunade, bless her sadistic, wicked heart, is entirely unmoved by this display of dramatics. She straightens, waves a dazed-looking Chunin forward to take her patient, and turns to the newcomers. Who here is wounded? She asks, planting her hands on her hips and surveying the 6 shinobi narrowly. Kagami immediately raises his hand, clamping his eyes shut and waving at Jiraiya almost desperately. "I'm mentally scarred," he insists. "Please, it's causing trauma with its mere presence. Make it go away!" "Hey!" Jiraiya protests, stiffening, because if he has to wear this thing, he's going to own it. "I'd like to see you pull off a nurse's outfit with this much panache." Orochimaru makes a low sound of entirely evil amusement. "I don't think that word means quite what you think it means, Jiraiya," he says, then studies the group. "Tsunade Itachi has a debilitating and likely fatal cough that I've found is resistant to every treatment I've tried. Perhaps you will have more luck, given our divergent skill sets." Minato does a truly comical double take. He squeaks, eyes widening to an honestly rather worrying size. Then he blenches to a pale green and seems to grow a bit faint, if that swaying is anything to go by. "If only Kushina could see him now," Jiraiya thinks a little wistfully. She never did quite let up on the unreliable ditzy pretty boy thing, and she'd get so much glee out of this situation. Granted, a good portion of it would be at Jiraiya's expense, but Jiraiya feels it would be entirely worth it for the mocking it would earn Minato. Sarutomi just sighs aggrievedly at all of them, though he directs a particularly stern look at an unrepentant Tsunade and says dryly, "Kakashi is unconscious and has remained that way for the last 30 minutes. Obito is coming off the after effects of Sharingan-induced behavioral modification. I'm not entirely certain what we should be looking for in his case, and the only Uchiha who could have told us is long since dead, I'm afraid." Tsunade's lips tighten faintly, and she steps to the side, nudging Jiraiya out of the way as she does so. "Kakashi, here. The other one can go there. If they're not dying right this moment, they can wait. Uchiha, since you are dying and we need you alive long enough to turn in your report on the last 12 years, examining room 67. Jiraiya, Orochimaru, you'll be helping." She strides towards the door, only pausing to press a soft kiss to Sarutobi's forehead as she passes. He smiles back at her and pats her shoulder, and then moves with Kagami to deposit the man they're carrying on the second bed. Jiraiya takes one look at Minato's pale face, rolls his eyes, and pulls Kakashi out of his loose hold. "Go find your son," he tells the man, not ungently. "We'll survive without you for the next hour or so, and I'm sure Naruto would like to spend a bit of time with his father." Minato smiles faintly at that, rubbing a hand through his blonde hair. "He's the Uzukage now, Sensei," he says softly, with an aching sort of pride in his voice. "I was there when he was born, and now he's a Kage. He's befriended the Kyuubi and defeated Akatsuki. Isn't that amazing?" That is surprising, but at the same time entirely expected. Jiraiya smiles too, remembering the brilliant knucklehead he dragged along with him to look for Tsunade, the boy who wouldn't give up no matter what, and regardless of the odds. Yeah, that sounds exactly the kind of person who could rebuild Uzushio from a ruin. "Even the strongest man still needs a father sometimes," Jiraiya reminds his student quietly, clapping him gently on the shoulder. "And I bet Naruto needs you more than most, with the life he's had. Go on, kid. I know you won't do." Minato shakes himself, then gives Jiraiya the same brilliant grin his son inherited, and vanishes in a flash of yellow light. Obito comes awake with his head aching hollowly and silence all around him, the smell of disinfectant sharp at his nose, and a familiar presence hovering over him. He sighs and turns his head, feeling the smooth cloth of the pillowcase sliding over his scars, but doesn't open his eyes. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to face what he'll have to face once he does. There's a long moment of complete silence, and then movement. Obito tracks it, and doesn't let himself react when deft fingers curl around his wrist, lifting his hand from the mattress and running a thumb over his palm. Kakashi doesn't say anything, but Obito finally gives in and opens his eyes, finding the Kapitan seated directly in his line of sight. "I kind of was helping to catch you crying," Obito says after a moment. Kakashi looks back at him, Hitayati tilted up to leave both eyes visible, and that's a shock. Startling and a little unnerving to see the eye he gave Kakashi from this close up. His eye, which is the reason for Kakashi's reputation, for his standing as one of the strongest shinobi in the world. and Obito took the same eye and murdered thousands. There's only one crybaby in this room, Obito. It is not me. Kakashi parries, like it's instinct. Like they haven't spent the last 20 odd years with the world between them. And as though Kakashi recognizes that, too. His grip on Obito's hand tightens and he drops his gaze to it. The skin is about 3 shades paler than even Obito's Uchiha white skin, and has the faintest greenish tinge that's usually invisible, but which shows up clearly in the hospital's unflattering light. Obito kind of wants to wrench it away, hide it under the blankets, but at the same time he can't quite force himself to do so. Kakashi is touching him. His hands are warm. It's been a very, very long time since Obito felt that kind of skin warmth, since he felt any sort of touch at all, really. "How are you?" Kakashi asks, low and intent, and that's enough to make Obito close his eyes again. "I'm fine," he manages after a moment, and when Kakashi makes a noise of quiet disbelief, opens one eye to glare at him. "It's the truth," he insists, pushing himself up to lean back against the pillows. Even that small bit of exertion leaves him feeling weak and unsteady. "But if you're asking about my intentions," Kakashi snorts. "I was asking how you are," he insists. Maybe it's even true. Kami knows Kakashi has always been an unpredictable jerk. Obito sighs and rubs at his scars, a habit he's never quite managed to break. "Weak," he admits at last. I've stopped hating, and that's what kept me going for so long. Now I'm just empty. It's going to take some time to get used to that." "And your intentions?" Kakashi prompts, eyes crinkling in a secretive, laughing smile, and Obito has to pause just for a moment because that's an expression he's never seen on Kakashi's face before. Not ever. He swallows but forces himself to look away with a hollow laugh. "Don't worry. Koto Amatsukami is unbreakable," he answers bleakly, then reaches up to tap his temple. "I know I can't attack Konoha, that I'm loyal, and my way of going about things was wrong." Then he taps his chest, the hole where Sasuke stabbed him, neatly healed without so much as a mark. "It just hasn't quite sunk in yet in here." It's frustrating, because Obito thinks of his goal and wants it, but he knows down to his bones that he won't pursue it anymore. And maybe someday he'll come to terms with that, but for right now, it's a strange and almost painful divide. But what his father... And he has a father, or had one, a father who loved him and wanted the best for him and probably hates him now. What his father had said is entirely true. What Kakashi said is true. He wants Rin to greet him with a smile when he dies. He wants her to call him by name and know who he is and not turn away from him because of what he's done. And maybe she will because of those he's killed, the lives he's ruined, but maybe she won't. And right now, like this, Obito thinks he might someday have a chance of meeting her eyes again. Intellectually, he knows that Koto Amatsukami is a very large part of his easy acceptance of these thoughts, but he doesn't care. Can't care, doesn't want to, and won't even try to fight Shisui's power. This is who he is now, broken and battered and fallen, and he's accepted that. When he looks up, Kakashi is watching him again, expression unreadable behind the mask and eyes thoughtful, considering. "You're leaving," he says bluntly. Obito considers misleading him or twisting the truth until Kakashi drops the subject. But he's tired of lying. He has been for years now, and isn't that the greatest irony in the world? He who wanted to build a perfectly truthful world where lies didn't exist laid all the groundwork without ever speaking a single truth to anyone. "Yes," he admits at length. I can't stay here. Koto Amatsukami might have started the process, but I still have to sort out everything in my head, and if I stay here, it's going to tear me apart." He remembers Kakashi's words to him in Kamui, remembers the offer, strange and startling and unasked for, to come with him, to help spread a true peace across the world. But he doesn't mention it. Maybe it was a lie or a desperate attempt to reach him, and Obito certainly isn't about to hold Kakashi to it. But Kakashi doesn't even hesitate to ask, "Want some company?" Obito's hand clenches, fingers going tight, and it's entirely a coincidence that he just so happens to be clutching Kakashi's hand in his. Happenstance. He doesn't answer, but Kakashi meets his eyes, and that's answer enough. Tsunade's bellow of anger upon returning to find 2 empty beds and a conveniently open window is enough to shake the hospital right down to its foundations. That lazy, perverted ninja! She snarls, slamming a fist into the wall and leaving a crater the size of a respectable boulder. When I get my hands on him, I'm going to wring his scrawny, ungrateful neck! Oh, hey, he left a note. Kakashi prudently snatches up the small scrap of paper before Tsunade can grab it and tear it into teeny tiny pieces. He reads the hastily scrawled words, then winces and begins to edge backward. Oops, never mind, just a scrap. Tsunade withdraws her fist from the second crater in the wall, this time threateningly close to Jiraiya's skull, plucks the paper from his hand and reads what it says. Got lost on the road of life. Will return eventually. However, Sensei, take care of Mr. Uki for me. Jiraiya sees his chance and bolts for safety. It might have even worked if not for his high heels.